Hey everybody, welcome back to the Typewriter video series. This is Joe Van Cleve, and yes, this is where the whole series started, right here at Richmond Park in Southeast Albuquerque at this very same table, and in fact with this very same Webster XL 747 typewriter. Yeah, a couple years ago, and I think back then my beard was full beard and quite shaggy. Same jacket, different shirt, slightly different cap, I believe. But here we are back at the start of this series. Welcome back. That was a V22 Osprey tilt rotor. You know, when I introduced this series, I introduced it as a series that was going to be dedicated to manual typewriters. And we've pretty much stuck to that promise, although we have covered in these last 200 episodes quite a bit about electric typewriters, like electric type R typewriters, some electronic typewriters like daisy wheel typewriters, and more recently, of course, we've covered a little bit about the thermal electronic typewriters. So we've kind of gotten a little more broadly based than just manual typewriters, but that has been the primary focus of this series all along. When this series started, I was talking at this introduction about this ongoing typewriter revival, how the usage mode of typewriters has changed from that of the business office to almost exclusively private use, and the private uses have evolved over time. It's not just people writing personal correspondence or writers and authors writing for their careers or whatever, their academic or professional careers with typewriters, but there's a lot of new usage modes for typewriters that were never really present or very prevalent during the heyday of the typewriter. And we've certainly seen this trend continue during these last few years as this series has unfolded. Certainly the typosphere has continued to evolve. I think the bloggers, the typewriter blogging, is probably diminished somewhat. I know in my own personal case, I have not been dedicated as much to typewriter blogging as I once was. But of course, this YouTube channel, the productions and all that takes up some time for me. But for other people, I think social media in the form of, for instance, the Facebook typewriter groups, there are several groups, the Antique Typewriters group and the Antique Typewriters Maintenance group. Those are a very popular source of social interaction for typewriter aficionados, and it's a sort of a clearinghouse for the buying and selling and repairing and use of typewriters. And just as I indicated in my introduction several years ago, I've found usage modes for typewriters, mainly manual typewriters, in my own personal creative life, and it's a paper-based workflow, and that continues to be true, and my usage modes have evolved over time and over the series as it's progressed. I've found new ways of doing things, and I've discovered things through some of the things that you guys have shared with me as well. But the typewriters become a part of a larger aesthetic of privacy and of being physically disconnected, but for a short period of time, from the larger internet and the cloud, if you will. So we find these machines with the paper-based workflow gives us the ability to truly be disconnected, creatively disconnected for a time, after which we can go back, reconnect, and kind of share what we've done. And it's kind of an interesting dichotomy and an interesting workflow in this day and age where, because of the ubiquity of internet-based economy and society, we find you have to be purposeful in your disconnection. You have to purposefully seek out ways to be creative, to focus on things going on up here and getting them down on paper, for instance. So it's an evolution, and a lot of us have had trouble in navigating that evolution, and that's why we come to these social groups to be able to share with each other what works and what doesn't. So as this series has evolved, it's been a lot of fun for me every week having to figure out, what do I really want to say this week? What do I want to talk about? some of the things have been surprising even for me. There's been several videos that I've really enjoyed doing. I had one a few months back where I was walking along the banks of the Rio Grande and just doing some philosophizing about typewriters and an analog-based, physical-based, paper-based workflow. And those kinds of videos have been very surprising in their resulting response and just in my own enjoyment of them. But there's other videos that I would have liked to have made, I think, more of, and I haven't. For instance, I know that every week I get questions or comments asking me to cover how do you repair this specific problem with this typewriter, how do you do this or that, how do you fix this little nagging problem. A lot of times it comes down to maybe I don't have that exact typewriter in my collection, or maybe I used to have that typewriter in my collection and I no longer have it in my collection, so I can't really directly go in and help you by taking my machine apart and trying to figure out what your problem is with your machine. I have done a number of repair videos, but it's really difficult to diagnose someone else's typewriter problem using my machines. And so for that reason, I would suggest that if you have any kind of repair issues, which are very common with the typewriter collecting hobby, you go check out Ted Monk's website and check out those typewriter repair manuals, the typewriter repair Bibles that he has reprinted, and also visit the Facebook Antique Typewriters Maintenance Group, I believe is the name of it, and they are very helpful also in trying to analyze and give you advice on what are the common fixes for a lot of problems with different machines. Well, so when I started that video 200 episodes ago, sitting at that bench back there with the blue Brother Webster XL747, I didn't know where that series was going. I didn't know how many episodes it would be. I didn't know how long it would go for. I just expected I'd probably talk about the basics of manual typewriters and the kinds of information that a lot of people want to know in order to learn how to use them and to care for them. And that was kind of just my starting idea. It was an interest of mine, and I figured, hey, it's an interest of mine, let's just make some videos about it. So the thing is about the typewriter series is, of course, my channel is not the only channel that talks about typewriters. And there are other channels, Phoenix Typewriter, among several others that are quite notable, and especially Phoenix Typewriters. Dwayne Jensen is a professional typewriter repairman. He's been doing it for decades. And so he's the guy, that has a lot more knowledge than I'm just a hobbyist, and I'm not even the most knowledgeable hobbyist out there, to be honest with you. In terms of technical knowledge, I think what I offer is kind of the beginner's level of technical knowledge. There's a lot of things I haven't done on typewriters. I really haven't disassembled a segment completely. Taking every type bar and every linkage apart. I haven't done that. There's a lot of hobbyists out there that have done that kind of stuff that I haven't. Part of the reason why I haven't is because I generally try to keep my typewriter repairs to a point where it's as efficient as possible, minimizing the amount of potential for damaging the machine or whatever because of my limited experience and knowledge, and really not having much recourse to have somebody bail me out if I get into a lot of trouble. There's only one other professional typewriter repair shop in Albuquerque, and he's old and he's very busy, has a lot of work, nobody else to help him, and he's not going to really help me if I have a little problem like that. I certainly can't bring it to him. So some of you guys out there are actually in a better position than I am. You have repair shops where you can go to and work there. In some, at least in one case I know of, they'll even let you use their facilities, their cleaning facilities, and some of their tools and whatnot. So anyways, that's why I have kind of limited the amount of intensity of repairs that I get involved with my machines, because I'm trying to limit the possibility that I'm going to damage them irreparably. But one thing that this typewriter series has done so much for me personally is it's put me into contact with you guys, and I have had invaluable richness in my life through friendships, acquaintances, relationships developed through this series. And I really find for me that is probably the most valuable part of my participation in this series. Of course, there are other benefits I've gleaned just from having created and produced 200 videos. There are some at least technical things that I've learned that are of use to me now in terms of shooting video and editing that I didn't know before. But in terms of the actual richness of the experience, I certainly think it's that interrelatedness through the comment section down below that really makes it so valuable to me for myself. So when I started this channel 200 episodes ago, I think I was still editing video on an iPod Touch, which is smaller than an older iPhone. I was using iMovie and uploading them through iMovie to YouTube. Somewhere about a third of the way through, I think I bought the Mac Mini that I'm currently using, and I'm still using iMovie. One of the reasons why I'm using iMovie is because my sophistication of video production doesn't really necessitate all of the features that a more full-featured video editing suite can provide, and so the overhead required of the computer doesn't really justify what I would be using it for. I would end up with a Adobe Premiere, one of those other kinds of softwares that has a steep learning curve, a lot of capability that I really wouldn't be using, and would run like a dog on my Mac Mini. So as it turns out, iMovie runs fine and it does what I want. So anyway, that's the reason why I continue to use that. As far as cameras go, I think when I started this channel, I was shooting with a Panasonic G5, and the G5 did not have an external microphone input, and so I think I was using the little brass reflector that I stuck up in the hot shoe above the camera, because the stereo mics were right on top of the camera on either side of the hot shoe, or just forward of the hot shoe, like right above the lens. And anyway, using that little reflector thing, it would sort of bounce most of the front of the camera ambient sounds into the microphones, but it wasn't really ideal. So what happened is the G5, the hinge on the flippy screen, the flippy tilty screen, the Panasonic designed with the Micro Four Thirds, that hinge became loose. And I dropped the G5 off to my local camera repair shop, and they had it for so long that that's when I decided to buy the G7. And also in the interim period, I bought a used GH3, which is a more video-centric Micro Four Thirds Panasonic camera. So I had a GH3 and the G7. I still have those. Those are still my main cameras. The G5 eventually was repaired over a year and a quarter later. They called me up from APT Camera Repair here in Albuquerque and said, hey, your camera's ready. So I got that as a spare camera, but mainly for stills. Anyway, so I was continue to use mainly Micro Four Thirds. I did get about a year ago a little Canon Vixia camcorder, low-end camcorder, just to experiment with it, and it's fairly inexpensive, but I wasn't really pleased with the video quality, and it's a very small sensored camera, as is this GoPro. But I quit using it for videos pretty much. I mean, it has a nice telephoto zoom and pretty good optical stabilization, but it didn't have a good wide angle. The wide angle was not wide enough for vlogging use, and you know, the video quality of it wasn't great. Anyways, getting to this camera, this is the GoPro Hero 7 Black. I've been using this probably almost exclusively for the last month. Those shots I shot at the picnic table were done with the GH3, but this is kind of become my de facto camera now for a lot of uses because the stabilization is so good. It is a 4K camera, but I usually shoot it in 2.7K, which is like halfway between 1080p and 4K quality. gives you better quality than 1080p. You're able to crop in a little bit, but the file sizes aren't so ginormous. Again, I do like the optical stabilization. That's the main benefit. I have the external microphone adapter. I would normally be wearing my Rode portable wireless microphone, except I left it at home, and luckily I had this old Audio-Technica lav mic, wired lav mic with the wonderful 16-foot cord that I have to tie wrap up into a bundle just to be able to manage the cords properly. But anyway, that's just a little side note of the technical end of what I've been doing as far as video technology. But I do like to go out and about, and so during the course of this series, you've seen me go a lot of places, including way out to the desert in the Ojito Wilderness at one time, with a folding chair and table up on a bluff overlooking some rugged canyons. That was a lot of fun. So I like going places with typewriters, and that is, of course, one of the benefits to having a portable manual typewriter, is you can take it places. If you're the kind of person like me that likes to write in different locations, it is fun to take a typewriter to those locations, because I've found a lot of times that getting out to certain locations is inspiring. The scene, the setting, the novelty of it or whatever, it just inspires me, and I can get into a mental space where it's a lot easier to be creative. So a really good question you might want to be asking me is, Joe, what is the future of the typewriter video series? Well, I don't really intend on ending it for certain. There's no reason to. It's not really a story. It doesn't have a beginning, middle, and ending. There's no story arc, if you will. It's just an ongoing series, right? So, having said that, also in my life, I'm not collecting as many typewriters as I once was, because of just the practicalities of living with a family in a small house and all that. So I can't constantly be doing videos about, oh, look at the new typewriter I found. But occasionally I'm given typewriters. For instance, I have a Torpedo. Is it a number 5? I forget what model, but I have a Torpedo typewriter. I might have actually shown you a couple videos ago. And currently it's waiting on the rubber platen to come back from J.J. Short, and then I'm going to do a video about that, about cleaning it, reassembling it, and fixing some of the bugs in it. And so look forward to that. I certainly will continue to be doing typewriter videos. This series will be ongoing. It may not necessarily be updated as often as I once was, but it depends upon how inspired I am and what happens in terms of typewriter related things in my life. And that reminds me, there are some things that I haven't done yet in this channel that I really want to. There's an acquaintance of mine, special person, who gifted me the Triumph Norm 6 typewriter. And he has a huge collection of Hermes typewriters. He lives back east, and I want to do a long distance video interview of him. And so that has been pending. I'm going to be getting to that real soon. Look forward to that coming up. So also, my fellow Albuquerque typewriter aficionado, Kevin Kittle, continues to grow his typewriter collection, mainly with portables, and so I want to continue to interview Kevin and have him show me more of his typewriters. That would be great. And also, of course, we have the Albuquerque Typewriter Society, which is slowly growing, and I hope to do more videos about the individual members of the society and activities of that society. So anyways, those are some of the things I just want to continue doing. I do have, as I said earlier, some long-distance friendships and relationships with a lot of people in the typosphere. Notable among those are the Right Reverend Ted Monk over in Mesa, Arizona, and of course Bill Wall at Mesa Typewriter Exchange. I periodically like to visit them, probably on average about once a year, and it's fun to go over there. And so when I do that, I'll of course be continuing to do little interviews of them. But if you guys have any recommendations, any questions, any ideas, share your thoughts, How has this typewriter series affected you? Have you been blessed by it? Has it done you any good? Have you learned anything? I would like to know that. You know, I've covered a lot of things that are not just technical about typewriters, and that surprised me in this series. I didn't expect to get as philosophical as I've gotten at times, but I really do like thinking and talking about the larger role that typewriters play in our creative lives in this post-typewriter culture. And maybe the preparation for that in my life is that I've been an amateur student of media studies over the years. I have a small collection of books on film and video production and theory and media studies, and all that kind of stuff kind of dovetails into the whole world of typewriters, mechanical type, and creativity. And so that's one of the reasons why I like to, it's so easy for me to jump off into some philosophizing about it. But I hope you guys continue to be creative, to use your typewriters creatively in your life, that they can be a blessing to you and others. And until next time, yes, stay creative and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye.